Hello everybody and welcome to What's in Your Music Collection, episode 5, and I promise you we're going to be back doing a monthly show. There's been a bit of a break over the summer as we couldn't really find little slots for us to do this, but we're back on course now, although having said that, Gary Garbutt, who also joins us, is still out there somewhere on an aeroplane, so he hasn't quite got here for this one, but I'm very pleased to say that I'm joined by Charlie White. He'll be balancing out my kind of rockism side of things with his superb knowledge on all things to do with audio quality and some great artists as well. We kind of mapped out how this show is going to pan out, and then we had the sad news that Jack Bruce had died yesterday, and so I thought we'd kind of land on that a little bit just to talk about Jack Bruce. Not so much to do with the Cream stuff, because I think a lot of people know that. Although I did think, well, maybe not everybody knows where to start. You know what happens when someone dies? There's a sudden surge of interest in whatever they've done, and no one knows where to go, so they go straight to the best of or whatever. And so I had a little bit of a trawl around and realised that with the surge of interest in vinyl, there is actually a huge vinyl Cream box set coming out, which costs a lot of money, in case anyone's kind of thinking about getting that. So I just wanted to briefly touch on this box set, which is called Those Were the Days. Oh, I must say I'm very techie this month. I have another camera, and so I can show you a little bit different. But this box set, which I think is in the UK, it's about 20 quid. So in the US, I don't know if it's about $30, $35. It's got 4 CDs in it. It goes through every single album they made, and that includes the studio albums and all the live stuff as well, with a few rare tracks as well. So that's where I would start. The only criticism I would have with this is that Disraeli Gears, which is probably their best known album and possibly their best album, has the stereo mix, and you might think, well, isn't that good? Not in this case. In the 60s, for some reason, some sound engineers, because they were playing around with stereo, decided to put the whole drum kit over on one channel, which is I find it very difficult to listen to when you've got Ginger Baker on the left-hand side and completely no drums at all on the right-hand side. So from the US, I was able to get hold of a copy of this version of it, which is the Disraeli Gears Deluxe edition, which comes with the stereo and mono version. And I have to say the mono version is superb. I'm not sure if this is available in the UK anymore, but it's you can tell the old deluxe editions. I'm being a bit train spottish now that the booklets are slightly longer than they should be. But this has got some great tracks on it, some BBC recordings, and you've got a choice of the stereo and mono editions. But what I wanted to talk about Jack Bruce was, everyone knows he was in Cream and the solo stuff, which was quite jazzy, is that he also, after that, when he was kind of in the wilderness, not for very long, he then joined a band called West Bruce and Lang. And I know Dave Pipe is out there somewhere in the audience who posted something about this earlier. And to me, this was a great band. This is one of their albums. This is the first one, actually, called Why Don't You, 1972, on CBS Records. Apparently CBS were not that impressed with this album, so they didn't promote it very much, but it still made number 26 on the charts, I believe. It's typical kind of early 70s stuff. There's some great tracks like The Doctor, Third Degree, which Joe Bonamassa covered with Leslie West recently, again, and Love Is Worth the Blues, some really good stuff on it. And it's available on CD, but I don't know whether there's a remastered version at all. And they were also then straight into doing their second album, which was called Whatever Turns You On, from 1973. You can tell from the cover that Rock and Roll Excess was part of the course by this time, and the album is fairly disjointed. There are some fantastic kind of ballads with Jack Bruce on here. It's interesting, a lot of eating as many burgers and taking as many drugs as possibly can. And it's on the RSO label, 1973. But by the time they released this, I think it got to about number 100 in the charts. It was all over. and they then finished off with one final album, which I posted on the community wall yesterday, which was called Live and Kicking from 1974. Isn't that fantastic graphics? Gary would love that.
Oh yeah, he would definitely be all over that.
He'd be into that font. Now that font is awesome with feet and hands and stuff on it. It's an interesting live album, not because it shows 70s excess in that there's only 4 tracks on it, so just 2 tracks aside. But the 3 of the 4 tracks were not on either of the 2 studio albums. You've got Play With Fire, which is by the Stones, but bears no relation to the Stones track whatsoever. It's worked on actually one of the tracks off their first album. The Doctor is their kind of most famous track. Politician is a Cream track, and Powerhouse Sod is basically a bass solo. So if you are into Jack Bruce from the bass perspective, the track on here, Powerhouse Sod, is awesome. Fantastic track album. They are available on CD, and they're on the Sony label. I also think I can't remember. It's the American reissue label, Charlie, that does a lot of this stuff with not very good artwork. What they called? It's not
Legacy.
No, it's begins with W.
Wounded Bird.
That's it. Wounded Bird, I think. You can get them from, but the Esoteric Records also do them as well. But one of my favourite outings for Jack Bruce is this album by John McLaughlin, which is just called Electric Guitarist, and this is a typical jazz kind of fusion album, although it's from 1978, so it's fairly late on in the period. So we've also had Return to Forever, Weather Report, Billy Cobham, so this is really at the top end of jazz fusion. But on this album you've got Stanley Clarke, Chick Corea, Tony Williams, Billy Cobham, Jack Bruce, all sorts of people on it. And so if you're into kind of jazz fusion and you want to kind of explore a deeper aspect of Jack Bruce's work beyond Sunshine of Your Love, this is a very good album. This is a Japanese mini gatefold sleeve one, so it probably mimics the original vinyl one very well. And the only other kind of Jack Bruce stuff I wanted to touch on, if I can find it, is BBM, which is an album he did with Ginger Baker and Gary Moore. I think in the year 2002, and this is very much like Cream, but with Gary Moore it's a little bit more metallic. There's a lot of feel in there, some great vocals. I can't remember how well that sold, but the fact there's only one of them would suggest that they either all fell out or it didn't do as well as it could have done. But it's a great image. I'll bring it up on the other camera. It's a great image of Ginger Baker there, and I think he actually used that photograph for his autobiography years ago. And before we move on, I did manage, going through my record collection, found a very rare session from Jack Bruce. And this is from a guy called Bernie Marsden, who used to be the guitarist in Whitesnake before they became super famous in the US. So this is the kind of UK rhythm and blues version of Whitesnake. And this is on the Parlophone label, and it's quite Beatlish. It's a typical guitarist solo album, so there's a bit of kind of harmony vocals, a bit of jazz rock, a few ballads, a little bit disjointed in places, to be honest, but you know, John Lord's on there, Simon Phillips on drums, Jack Bruce, and Head the Ball, which has got Don Airey on keyboards, is probably there's a very good jazz fusion track, to be honest, and that's from 1979. And a great cover for those of you in the UK, as it reminds us of clocking in at factories, if you've ever done that, and being late because you're out there trying to live the rock and roll life. So that's a good album. I don't know whether that's on CD. It is. Someone out there can let me know. So that's kind of an overview of Jack Bruce. I have to say, since he's passed away, I have posted a few things on my Google Plus wall, especially a documentary from 1969 when he was really at the height of his powers, really. But it's a very sad loss, and he's a lot more than just a bass player. He was a cello player, piano player, composer, and vocalist. Oh, and I've got some comments coming in from Dave Pipe. Big grin on my face. I did play a track from Why Don't You this morning. It is a good album. And as he says, so Love Your Worst Blues was a play with fire. I have to say, Dave, that I didn't notice that. And when I first heard the live album, I kept thinking, is this live album from before they started, or why would you suddenly convert a track you'd called your own and turn it into a cover version? But who knows why? But if you want to YouTube that, we can't play any music on this show because Google will kind of shut us down for copyright reasons. But if you want to find out about any of the music albums we feature, just go to YouTube and type them in, and there they'll be. So that's a little overview of Jack Bruce. And Charlie, do you want to talk about Boz or U2 first?
Oh, it's a coin flip. Let's go into Boz Scaggs.
Yeah.
Boz Scaggs is one of my favorite singers of all time, but I only have maybe 2 albums from him in the past. And the one album that everybody knows oh so well is a great piece of album. It's an album that is called 6 Degrees. And I think this was his 5th album for CBS Records. And if you look at the rundown of musicians on that album, it's basically a Toto album. If you know the band Toto, 4 to 5 guys in Toto played on this album all through it. But it's a great R&B album. It really, really is. We all know the song "Low Down," which was a huge hit. But on side A, there's a couple of boogie woogie New Orleans ragtime songs on there, and there's also a really great ballad at that closes that side 1 album called Harbor Lights. It's just a wonderful album, and it also ventures into reggae, and finally that album closes out with a song called, I wish I had it here with me, but it's under a pile of junk that I don't want to dig into right now. It closes out with the ballad that was covered later by Rita Coolidge called "We're All Alone." And I think that it's a great album. If it's not in your collection, I would definitely look for it and put it there because it is a wonderful album. It's really, really good. There's not really a bad song on that album.
Where did Boz Scaggs come from? Where does he originate from before he became solo?
I want to say Boz Scaggs came from Texas. I think he came from Dallas. I know he played for a long time with Steve Miller. I think he played with Steve Miller for a while at one point. And then he sort of drifted in and out, and then he landed a contract with CBS Records, and the first 2 albums of his didn't go anywhere. It had a couple of minor hits, but that one album put him up on the very top for a while.
Is he still producing music?
He's still making music. In fact, he had a new album come out, I think, last year. So he's still out there. In fact, he was touring. He was touring last year with Michael McDonald and I want to say Donald Fagen, if I'm not correct on that.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, there was they were doing a triple bill show that came through Austin, and it sold out so fast I couldn't get a ticket for it. It would have been a great show because all those guys could play for hours on end. Just wonderful.
So would you recommend that as an album for anyone out there who's not familiar with his music? Is that the best place to start?
Absolutely, yes. I would definitely recommend that album for a first-timer to Boz Scaggs over, say, a greatest hits compilation because that album, like I said, there's not a bad track on that album. It's really, really good. It came out in 1975 or 76, and I have owned that album in virtually every format you could think of, from record to cassette to 8-track to CD.
Ah, so you bought that several times then, Charlie?
Well, the 8-track died. The 8-track got eaten up in my brother's car. The cassette was borrowed by a friend of mine. Never got it back. The record, I had the record still, but it's scratched, and the CD is somewhere in the collection.
Excellent. Because on the What's in Your Music collection community, the term double dipping, which I think Charlie coined first of all, after that, is something that all of us, even though some of us try and feel that we haven't done it that much, we all have. And I think the modern record industry targets people like us sometimes.
Oh, they definitely do.
Several times.
They know a sucker when they see one.
They do, and I think I have that on the front of my forehead sometimes when certain things appear on the release schedules. Even though I think what possibly can there be that's going to entice me to go there again? Okay, well, I'm going to go there now with an album that I bought several times, and this was one I was very excited about, and I think it was one that Charlie mentioned first of all on the community when he said, "Oh, there's a huge Made in Japan by Deep Purple box set coming out," and he was right that I would quickly put that on pre-order. And it's an album that came out in 1972, and this is the original. On glorious vinyl, and it's nice gloss, the wonderful quality of the original vinyl in this kind of laminated glossy cardboard and a really exotic Japanese flag in the middle. And it's hard to imagine what it was like, well, to try and explain what it was like when you bought an album back in the day. I was about 14 when I bought this, and seeing that there were only 7 tracks on it.
Oh, you mean you own the shit?
And you know what that was like when usually back in those days vinyl would have about at least 5 tracks on each side, if not more. So to see a vinyl album that had side 4 one song, and you knew on the album, the studio version, that song Space Trucking was 4 minutes long, you know, to a 14-year-old it was like, wow, what the hell are they going to do for the other 20 minutes? And, of course, it was the time of experimentation. So the album has stayed with me a long time. So when I moved over to CDs, I was very excited and obviously started to buy these kind of things again. And my first CD version I bought was actually a Japanese import because I was so determined to get it on CD. And it was the only one I could find was the Warner Brothers mix from, I think it's the late 1980s. Now, those of you out there, this is probably, and this is a fantastic master and mix of the album. It's the same as the vinyl. Just wanted to point that out, because what happens next is not so good. They decided the album itself was taken for 3 nights, and so for people like me, the obsessive fan, they took it from 3 nights. Did they choose the right night? What were the other nights like? Maybe they were better. So in the early 90s, somebody, EMI, decided to release all 3 nights all at once, so you could have each CD has got exactly the same tracks on, bar Smoke on the Water not being on it, because the reason why they chose the night they did for that is because it's the only time Richard Blackmore didn't make a mistake on that particular song. So that makes sense. And basically the mix on this is not very good. I don't know who did it, but obviously it was someone who didn't really know much about the music. So you can buy this, all 3 discs, for about less than 10 quid. So it'd be about probably $10. So remember that as well, because this is still available. They then decided to put that right and issue it in a black cover, so you can't read any of the text at all. And this was the 25th anniversary, although I do think it came out after that. And this again, where they've mixed up the guitar that was on the left-hand side of the vinyl was now being switched over to the opposite speaker. So they've messed around with it. And what was really annoying was the vinyl album, which is what happened in those days. At the end of each track, it fades out, and you can hear the vocalist or whatever saying a bit of dialogue. And in those days, you had to turn up the volume to try and hear what he was saying. The CD, they decided to just get rid of that. So the second track starts before just as the crowd have started applauding for the last one. So they've taken out all the dialogue completely. So for a lot of people, it was not quite so good. So then the news came they were going to do it properly. 40th anniversary set, a huge box, a Blu-ray disc, 2-disc version, 2 separate mixes. Not sure why they were doing that. And even a separate mix on the single disc. Every one of them had something about it. And as the excitement grew to buy this album, I went on to a forum, which Charlie pointed out to me, where audiophiles go and talk about this kind of stuff and look at the kind of spectral analysis of sound and what on the loudness, etc. And the reviews for mainly Japan, as it was coming out, people were just saying, I'm not buying it because of how it looks on screen, as the files look, with all the kind of flatlining and stuff. And so I nearly didn't buy it, I have to say. And so I tentatively went for the 2 CD version. This is called a deluxe version because it does that. That was the reason. And this was produced by the guy that produces all of Joe Bonamassa's stuff, whose name has completely gone out of my mind at the moment. He produces all that stuff, and he also produced Come Taste the Band. I can't remember his name. I'll see if I can find it while we're on air. But anyway, the production that this guy does, if I can find it. No, I can't. Anyone out there who knows who produces Joe Bonamassa's stuff? And he does a lot of remixes.
I have no idea.
You know, oh, I found it. Kevin Shirley. He also did Zeppelin's Who Won the West and all sorts of things.
Right.
He doesn't do a good job on this, I'm afraid. I wasn't impressed. I was upset, to say the least. So I managed to get hold of, quite cheaply, the single disc version. And this also mixes out all the dialogue from the original vinyl. So, still keeping on to the other camera, I got this. Now this is the CD box, not the vinyl super duper version, which cost about $200. This is the CD version. It comes in an album size box. It has a sticker on the back which is stuck on not quite straight. I'm pointing that out for a reason, not because I'm a train spotter, because the reason why there's a sticker on the back is because they spelt Smoke on the Water wrong on the back of every one of these they produced, and no one noticed until they were ready to be shipped, which is a bit sad really, because people like us need to know this stuff. So it comes in a nice hard box. It comes with the Japanese program from 1972, which is a nice touch. It's all in Japanese, which it would be. So I'm afraid I can't read any of that out to you, but it's very good. It comes with a 7-inch single. This is quite normal nowadays for them to do this. They did this to the Who special edition as well. So this is in vinyl so thick, no one had singles like this in the 70s, or even now. You cannot bend that. I don't know if it's 200 gram vinyl, but it's great. But it's the kind of thing that you're just not going to play, but it's a nice thing to have, so I'm not going to grumble. It comes with a press release, and it comes with a family tree, which only goes up to 1978, which I suppose technically it's gone beyond made in Japan, but really it should have gone a bit further for to be a bit more accurate. And then it comes with a huge hardback book, which should be the piece resistance there, the CDs, all 3 nights, and it's lots of arty pictures. Some of them are from the wrong era, to be honest. They're from a different lineup of the band, and it has lots of people talking about it, from Lita Ford. I'm not quite sure what her connection is with Deep Purple, but Dave Meniketti from Y&T, Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater, Robin Zander from Cheap Trick is in there, and various people. But I think this, as nice as it is, and it could have been a lot better. And then they've stuck all the encores on one CD. So it's like when you went to see the band, you'd see them play the whole set, and then you'd go back the next night to hear the encores. And it comes with a DVD, which is a documentary of the whole album, which is not bad, to be honest. Although much of it has been just shown on BBC 4 and in the UK. It talks a bit about this is produced by a totally different guy. I think it's Mark Pullman, I think, and he does a fantastic job. So the discs on this set are fantastic, and you also get a download code to download them in high res, which is the same as the Blu-ray disc. Now that is fantastic, and it's very expensive, but that to me was worth it. But I nearly didn't buy it because of the reviews I saw on the, I think it was the Steve Hoffman forum, I think it was. Mm-hmm. But they have a point, because why release the same product in so many different formats with slightly different mixes on each one? Surely that must have been more work for them, to be honest. But you know, I'm glad I bought the big box, but it could have been done better. And maybe it's because of the demographic that I am. I'm always going to be a bit fussy, and maybe the record labels are onto a lost cause, thinking of people like us who remember the thing the first time round. We know what we're looking for, and sometimes the quality control lets it down at the last minute, really.
Right. I don't know. That's quite expansive. It really is. But it took a long path for you to get to that point, though.
It did, and also, you know, basically that box has got 3 discs from the 3 nights of the concerts, which were they recorded. It's got the encores on a separate disc. I mean, you know, and then you've got the DVD. But essentially, it's just a different version of the 3-disc version they did in the early '90s, which is about $10. They just could have mixed that right in the first place. So I think it is a way of them thinking we're going to release this, and maybe the kind of fans thinking maybe they found something. They found something that they didn't know was there, but actually they've already found everything. So there's only so much you can tweak these things. I mean, I play my stuff through large speakers through a big hi-fi. If I was buying that and just playing it through a small mini hi-fi with speakers just 1.5 feet apart, I don't think I'd notice much at all.
Yeah, I have to wonder what condition are those master tapes if they've been through all this and been through that many mixes and that many masterings. You know, what condition are those master tapes from 1972? They can't be in great shape here in 2014.
No, and I think one of the things the producer says in the notes actually is that because nowadays if you're recording a live album, all the bands probably just stand there and they know it's been recorded and everything's done properly. In those days, the band they were still running around the stage, so they were running in front of the amplifiers, which was blocking off the sound sometimes. So mixing it must have been quite difficult. To be honest, you know, because it wasn't done as scientifically as they would do them now. But in a way, that makes it more of an honest recording.
Right.
You know,
right.
There are some limitations you can hear on some of the tracks where they've mixed up certain elements that weren't there before, where you can actually hear, you know, the amps buzzing and you know, imperfections that weren't there. I think what makes it difficult is that if you've lived with something for such a long time, you know it so well that although you're quite excited to hear a different version of it, it's still it's almost like sacrilege. It must be the same as Jimmy Page remastering the Led Zeppelin back catalogue. He can only do so much, but if he goes too far, he'll turn everybody off.
Right. You're walking a tightrope between the purists and the collectors out there who want the art to remain the same no matter what you do, and they have others out there who want, okay, you can improve this with new technology, improve it while you can. So yeah, it's a tightrope to walk. It really is, and I don't envy those who have to make those decisions, like for the Beatles box sets or for the recent Led Zeppelin box sets either.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to necessarily talk about the Beatles, but I don't know if you posted it, but I saw it was a video for the mono vinyl box set. And there was the guy unwrapping each album one at a time.
I did post that, yes, I did, yeah.
That was I mean, even though I'm not that much of a fan, that looked fantastic. I mean, the love and attention that had gone into each one of those, and he was obviously so picky on what he expected to see, and the kind of authenticity of what they'd done. That did look a fantastic box.
I told everybody, I said, wait for the mono box set, wait for the mono set. It'll be much better than the stereo set. Trust me on this, it really will.
Yeah, and it certainly does look it as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is U2 have released a new album. And even if you're not a U2 fan, it's possible you're aware of this because you've probably got it.
Whether you want it or not. Shoving it down your throat from Apple.
I mean, I do have it actually, but I have to say I haven't played it. It's sat on my phone. I mean, what do you think?
Stepping away from the fact how Apple distributed this album to the world and everything, as the U2 album, it's a much more personal album. The writing is much more personal and more in depth and introspective than the last 2 albums. Musically, they don't cover anything new here. It sounds like the last 2 albums, unfortunately. I know they had a new producer for this album, guy whose name I can't recall. Maybe you remember Dead Mount. God, what's that name? But they have a new producer, but you really couldn't tell by the list by the way they played it. It sounds, I hate to say it, but it sounds like the same U2 album that we have for the past 10 years.
So do you think it's kind of just raised their profile, or do you think it's kind of damaged them in any way from the fact that people did feel as if they didn't do the choice with this album or not?
I think the whole thing with the distribution of it has damaged the reputations a bit, maybe a little bit more on this side of the Atlantic than anywhere else, because a lot of people were annoyed by the fact that it showed up on their phones and it showed up in their iTunes without any input from them, and a lot of people saw it as like an invasion of their property and such. And I can sort of understand that, but it's a free album. Why if you don't want it on your phone, take it off your phone. It's not that hard to do. Regardless of that, I've listened to it a few times on my phone. It's okay. It's not a great. I think U2 has been on the slide since Achtung Baby. I think they've been on the slide since then, and the slide to this day continues. And this album sounds like they phoned it in. That's the best way I could put it. They wrote some great songs. They went to the studio, cut the 12 tracks, and they dumped out of them. Yeah. And they didn't put. I don't think they put any more thought to it than that. Maybe they did. I don't think they really did. I don't think so. So it's an okay album. It's better than the last two albums out there, lyrically and such and material-wise. But they cover the same ground as before. And U2 was a band that always sort of like takes its fans like myself out of the realm. Like they would do something completely different than you would ever expect from the past, from the previous time before. They did it with pop, they did it with Achtung Baby, and they did it with the Joshua Tree albums. Those albums were radical and radical than the one that preceded it.
Yeah, the Joshua Tree album is a classic, and I think I understand why they did this with the new album, because they must have thought, well, this is going to take us into the ears of people who probably don't know much about us or haven't heard us for a long time, and for a lot of younger people who probably just see them as one of the elder statesmen of rock and pop, it probably wouldn't think about this, looking for a new U2 album. I can see why they did it, but I also think, at the end of the day, it's just a free album that arrived on your hardware, which you can listen to or not. So there are worse things going on in the world than new U2 albums landing on your phone, really. So I think I understand why some people were outraged, but it is just a free album. And I know some of the kind of big kind of people from that kind of age range have said they potentially damage music by giving it away for free, and were also like condoning piracy and saying music has no value. But I don't really see that either, really, because I imagine they did it because they thought, well, if people like this, they're going to try and seek out our back catalogue, and they might buy other stuff. They might come to our concerts, or it might make them inquisitive about buying the Joshua Tree, who maybe didn't know about it. So I can see that what they were doing was, just wanting more people to be talking about U2.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're trying to expand their audience expand the music to a whole new audience, and in some respects, it sort of backfired on them. But it's not available yet in a physical format, but it will be I think first week of November or second week of November. It will be released on CD and vinyl. Yeah. And right now, if you go to the iTunes store, they're now offering like 5 more tracks from that album that have been remixes and such.
Well, I suppose that's the other thing that they can do, isn't it? Because they can give away this version, but they can also do a deluxe edition. They can call it a tour edition if they like, and that have extra tracks, and the U2 fans will still buy it, even though they've got a free version on their phone. Right,
and this one will have art this time, because the download didn't have any art to it except for a typed sheet that somebody made up somewhere.
Yeah, very true. There's a comment from Dave going back a bit before we got on to Men in Japan, who says, I had people borrow Silk Degrees while I was doing my DJ stints. It's a very good intro to Boz. So I think that's something I'll go and seek out after this, because I have to say, apart from Lowdown, I'm not that familiar with his music.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you go back? Just going back to Boz, who were his contemporaries at the time? Because it was that kind of what year was that? Was it kind of mid
I think it was.
70s?
I'm trying to think. It was mid 70s. I'm trying to think. It was 75, 76.
Yeah,
So it was out through. It was released at the same time, maybe along with "Bad Out of Hell" by Meatloaf.
yeah.
Um, Let me think who else might.
So kind of Eagles and Steve Miller was doing his stuff, wasn't he? So it was kind of a laid back kind of US kind of soul rock
Right.
gentle music.
Right, exactly. And what got me kicked into Boz Scaggs was that fact that one of this new soul singer from Britain, what's his name? Sam, help me out here. He has, I can't think, but Blue Eyed Soul singer from Britain, another one. This guy's actually pretty good. He made an appearance on American television recently, and he sounded pretty good. And I thought, I don't know what they do on that side of the Atlantic, but some reason they do it much better than this side sometimes when it comes to Blue Eyed Soul. And so I thought about Boz Scaggs, and I thought about Lowdown, because that Lowdown was played a whole lot on R&B radio on this side. It really was.
Excellent. Okay, right. The last one for me this month is another live double album recorded over several nights. So there's a theme, and this one I don't have on. I've never had on vinyl. It missed me completely. And this is the Allman Brothers. Live at the Fillmore, and this is a 1993 reissue where I think it was Tom Dowd, when he was still alive, remixed the whole thing. And what I didn't know was, unlike Made in Japan, which is just recorded as it was, the Allman Brothers, they did this several nights, and when they were pulling it together, they did actually take different nights and mix them together depending on what was going on to get the best version. So a guitar solo from one night will be transplanted onto one of the other nights, and which sounded very complicated. And so this was seen as the definitive version for that time. Nothing's definitive now, is it really? And so recently, I'll switch to the other camera for this. This was announced as the Allman Brothers Fillmore East recordings, all of them. That's a fantastic picture, by the way, I think, of that's it. And this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different nights this was recorded on. And it comes again in a nice hardback book. This is actually not a bad price. This is about 30 quid, so it's probably about $45 in the States, perhaps $40. Nice essay, lots of nice photographs, well put together. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 discs from different nights, all completely remixed. And the only thing that's been released before, obviously apart from the nights they used on the original album, is disc number 6 was used on the deluxe edition of Eat a Peach. But apart from that, it's all new stuff, all remixed. The only thing they've done to make people like me, although I have not done this, buy this several times over, is that this is the CD version, and they also released a Blu-ray version in 5.1 for all of the concerts. So they could have easily put the DVD. Well, in fact, the DVD set is on 3 separate discs, and they probably all would fit on one Blu-ray disc, I imagine. So they could have easily stuck that in here, and then you would have been able to buy one package and have the 5.1 mix and the stereo mix all in one place. But they obviously thought I might buy twice, but I haven't. There's enough is enough. But
so you did not buy the SACD that came out years ago of the double?
No, I didn't. You see, I've got Eat a Peach on SACD, which I bought for a fantastic price from Amazon only about 6 weeks ago, and it is fantastic. It's mixed by Jeff Glicksman, and it sounds unbelievable. It really does. And so it did intrigue me to thinking that the Allman Brothers, because I realised it did come out in 5.1, what that must sound like. Do you have that yourself?
No, I do not have that. I do remember seeing that double. It was a double SACD package that had both stereo and the 5.1 mix on the disc.
Yeah.
also, I think it also had some couple of bonus tracks on top of it. But I saw it in the stores a couple of times and passed it each time I saw it.
I mean, it's typical from its time. I mean, you've got tracks like Mountain Jam, which are 35 minutes long. So you've got
Right.
so you've got to be in the mood for this stuff. I mean, you're not going to sit down. Oh, I think I'll put Mountain Jam on this morning. You've got to be in the mood for it. I mean, it does feature Dwayne Allman, who was fantastic slide guitar player. It is like rhythm and blues music, but quite a lot of jazz in there as well. What's it? God, I'm having trouble with names today. But the other guitarist whose name is gone, it's Dickie Betts, is it?
Dickie Betts.
Dickie Betts. Now I think he was a bit of a jazzer, to be honest. And when you listen to some of the stuff he wrote on his own with the Allmans, there's always been a bit of jazz tinge, especially the instrumentals like
Elizabeth Reed.
Elizabeth Reed, exactly. Which there's some fantastic versions of that track on this. It's worth buying just for that, really. But they are very like jazz workouts and very melodic. It's not the typical kind of rock kind of improvisation you'd expect. Some quite different timings on there. And of course, Greg Allman has got a fantastic voice, but he's also a pretty mean Hammond player as well, really. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. He played Hammond organ on several Aretha Franklin records.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
When those guys were literally the house band at Muscle Shoals recording studios.
Oh right, because I do like Greg's solo stuff as well. And the album I haven't got. He did like an orchestral tour, in the mid '70s, I believe. It's a live album. I haven't heard it, but it's supposed to be very good.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's out of print now.
There's a great documentary about the Muscle Shoals Studios that aired here on this side on public television. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube or on the public television site. It's an hour long. It talks about all the people who played at Muscle Shoals, Jerry Wexler, all the production people who played there. And it was really great. And they talk about the Allman Brothers because both Dwayne and Greg played for a lot of R&B artists at that time.
Right. Okay. Where's Muscle Shoals? Have they ever played with Bob Seger, or is that? Or I'm probably.
I couldn't speak to that. I don't know. I know where Muscle Shoals is at. I've never been there before, but
Yeah.
It's up in northwest Alabama, near Tennessee.
Okay. No, they pipe coming with. Of course, the original gig was recorded by the Grateful Dead sound engineer Owsley Stanley. Thanks, Dave. I didn't know that. It's probably in the essay that's what happened. Most of the nights that they played were one after the other for the Fillmore concerts, apart from the last one, which was done almost a year later, and that was the one they used for the Eat a Peach double deluxe edition. And to me, that's my favourite disc from this new edition, really. But I think it's well put together, and compared with the price of the purple set, and compared with the price of the Led Zeppelin reissues, which is like £100 for a vinyl version, and and I'm just going to jump in there. It's something that's bugging me. A lot of people now think that when they do a deluxe edition, we want the vinyl version again. We don't really, because we've probably already got that. But there's a thing now that the record labels are putting together these big boxes to include the vinyl version again, and we don't necessarily need that bit, to be honest. So I think too many things are being put into these big boxes, when actually what I'd like from what I would have liked from the Led Zeppelin remasters would have just been a better essay, not just pictures, and the book, I suppose, because something to put a little bit of historical perspective on it. And I don't really need another version in vinyl.
I think what the record companies are doing right now, they're striking while the iron's hot. They know vinyl right now is very hot and very popular right now, and so I think that's what they're doing. They're just trying to strike while the iron's hot, because that of all the physical medium sales that are going on out there, I think vinyl is like leading the pack over CDs and everything else. So I sort of see their connection while they're doing it. I'm with you on that one. That all of us don't need another record in our collection that we already have.
Yeah, exactly. Although I think if it was a 5.1 mix was included in the box, then I'd be different. I do. I mean, I've got a lot of friends who have no idea what that's like, but I think if you immerse yourself in surround sound, you suddenly think, wow, this takes it somewhere else. So I do like a good 5.1 mix, not the
And
gimmicky one.
that's my biggest rub. I'm a stereo guy by heart, but I have SACDs with 5.1 mixes that are very good and some that are very bad.
Yeah.
And the good ones are few and far between. I've heard a couple of good ones. I heard a whole lot of bad ones.
Yeah, so have I. I think one of the poorest ones for me is Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow album on SACD. It's as if the guy just wanted to see what would happen if he made the guitar go from diagonally across the room several times for no reason whatsoever. I suppose it's a bit like we started the show by talking about the stereo mix of Disraeli Gears by Cream, where they stuck the drum kit in the left-hand side rather than mix it over both.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the early 70s, once they realised maybe the drum should be coming out of both speakers, they then started to put guitars at 4 o'clock in the afternoon in this speaker and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then moving the guitar solos from one to the other through your ears because they could. Which is fairly dramatic, I suppose, but awkward. But now what we're doing is, because everyone's listening through earbuds, is you have a stereo separation like this,
mm-hmm.
where everything sounds kind of mono in a way.
Yeah, in respect to the Jeff Beck one, I have that album too, but I don't have the 5.1 version. That mix was based upon the original quad version. That's
was it? Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
A lot of those CBS, a lot of those first generation SACDs that came from Sony that had 5.1 mixes were actually based upon the original 4-channel quad versions. Because I have 2 albums like that. I have Ship Ahoy by the OJs, which is a great album, which I would talk about that in the future.
Okay.
And it has a quad mix that is killer. It's a great mix. And also have Headhunters by Herbie Hancock.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's another great one. That's another great one. It's those single layer CDs are like rare as hen's teeth. They're very, very hard to find, and when you find them, they're very, very pricey. But if you can get them in the quad, I mean, if you get them in the 5.1 version, sometimes the mixes are worthwhile, and they're really, really good.
Well, Headhunters, I can imagine that must sound fantastic in 5.1 because it's such an incredible and inventive album, really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wonder whether with these pure audio Blu-ray discs now that are slowly coming out, whether that will be one of them. Because that's really these old 5.1 mixes.
Mm-hmm.
No outlet for them now because CDs, as you say, are very hard to find. DVD audio is all but gone. So it is really on Blu-ray audio is where maybe some of these mixes can come back. Although I think Rumours by Fleetwood Mac, when they did the Super Deluxe version of that, they left off the 5.1 mix from the set, which seems an error, really.
Mm-hmm. I think when I got the DVD of that, of course, and I don't think I've really listened to the 5.1 mix on that one either. But I have 2 versions of speaking of double dipping, by the way, Slow Hand by Eric Clapton, and one is an SACD version of Slow Hand that came out as a stereo and in the 5.1 mix, and I also have an early version of a now very dead format called DTS CD. Yeah, DTS CDs. And the DTS CD has the original quad mix of Slow Hand, not Slow Hand, but 461 Ocean Boulevard. I'm sorry, I mentioned the wrong album. 461 Ocean Boulevard. That is really actually the quad mix of that album that came out in the 70s. And I also have the same version. I have the same disc that have Band on the Run by Paul McCartney and Wings. Again, the exact same. It has the 4-channel quad mix on that album, on that CD.
Because I think maybe it's the fault some of the quad mixes weren't very subtle, were they? They were very.
No, they weren't very subtle. No. They're trying to sell hardware. They want to make sure that you hear all 4 channels when they're being used.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, isn't it? Because whereas 5.1, the rear speakers are usually quite subtle. It's almost ambient in some of it.
Right.
Whereas the old quad mixes, all the speakers are as loud as each other.
Exactly. But
yeah.
that's how Avalon by Roxy Music is mixed. I got that SACD. And 5.1, that's great. It's a great album for 5.1 because it is not doesn't draw you out of the music. The real channels are used mainly for atmosphere.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my favourite SACDs is Avalon by Roxy Music. I think that is so well done, and it's so expensive now. I'm so pleased I bought that one.
Yeah, I'm glad about that one too.
Okay, Charlie. Well, we've run out of time, but I want to thank you very much for joining me.
You're very welcome.
Today. It's been a great show, and we'll get the next one lined up for a month's time, and hopefully Gary will be able to join us then. But enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
And I'll see you soon. So thank you everybody who will watch in the future.
Bye-bye.
And please join What's in Your Music Collection community on Google+. Thank you.